Thank you very much. And finally, we have an MOU on public service capacity development, which fosters cooperation in public service capacity development. Areas include experience exchange, training, and research publication. It will be signed by the Director General of Kenya School of Government and the administrator for Angola's National School of Administration and Public Policies. Thank you very much. Their Excellencies will now deliver a brief joint address to the media.
Your Excellency, my brother, João Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola, honorable members of your delegation, ministers and guests, good afternoon and welcome to this very important occasion. Mr. President, let me thank you on behalf of the people and government of Kenya for making this inaugural visit by a head of state, the first in the history of our two countries. Your Excellency, you have corrected an anomaly that has existed for close to 40 years, that Kenya and Angola share a rich history of engagement as Kenya was involved in the independence of your great country. Mr. President, you're coming to Kenya today and making this first ever state visit by a president of Angola is very well appreciated by the people of Kenya, and it marks a turning point in the relations between our two countries. I affirm, Mr. President, the cordial relations between our two countries, the extensive collaboration and bilateral bond of friendship between our two nations, and we consider your country as our most dependable strategic ally in our continent. This state visit, Mr. President, precedes a meeting of our officials for the first ever Joint Commission on Cooperation, which has accorded our two countries an opportunity to deliberate on issues of mutual interest and review the implementation status of bilateral instruments that will further strengthen the existing cooperation between our two countries. President Lourenço had wanted to grace our Mashujaa Day as our chief guest, but he did send his representative, the Foreign Minister Angola, Tete Antonio of Angola, at the national celebrations yesterday in Kericho. We reaffirm our commitment, Mr. President, to continue developing bilateral cooperation in trade, in investment, in agriculture, in forestry, capacity development in public service, in transport and communication, and in all the other sectors that has seen us today cement the relations between our countries and provide a wider and broader framework for the engagement between our two countries to go forward. We've just witnessed the signing of 11 bilateral legal instruments that will now underpin and provide a framework and a firm foundation for the growth of our bilateral relations, for the growth of our business relations, investment, and trade relations. Mr. President, all the MOUs that we have signed today on telecommunication and ICT, on oil and gas, mining and geology, health collaboration, capacity building in public service, and cooperation in our respective diplomatic academies, these frameworks will unlock the potential of our commerce, our trade, our government-to-government and people-to-people relations. President Lourenço and I agree on the need to ensure improved people-to-people interaction. And the democratic credentials of Angola reflect the deep relations between our two countries and our common belief in the power of the people to run the affairs of their governments by electing leaders of their choice. We are very proud, Mr. President, of your re-election last year by an overwhelming endorsement by the people of Angola in a democratic, free and fair election. And you can count on Kenya as a partner in establishing our continent as a continent with democratic credentials, believe in the rule of law, and giving a chance to our people to decide their destiny, their progress, their development, and their government. We have had an extensive meeting with President Lourenço, and we have agreed on many areas. I have briefed Mr. President on what Kenya is doing alongside our East African community partners in stabilizing Eastern DRC. I have also congratulated President Lourenço for his not just participation, but leadership in especially the mediation efforts between DRC and Rwanda, and the leadership under ICGLR on managing the affairs with us in Eastern DRC. We concur that the situation in DRC needs to be brought under control. We share common positions on encouraging the government in DRC to work with its people in finding the mechanism that will enable the people of DRC, especially in the eastern side of DRC, to engage in dialogue, in consultation, and we are prepared under the Nairobi process to work out a mechanism for dialogue and consultation to facilitate M23's cantonment after an agreement on what happens after the cantonment exercise. And we believe that it is an achievable aim to engage in consultation, stabilize eastern part of DRC, and allow the people of DRC in general to benefit from their progress, from their development, and from stability and progress in their region. We have discussed to expedite and conclude discussions on the resumption of direct flights between Kenya and Angola as a mechanism of boosting the movement of people, movement of goods, movement of services, as a way of escalating our trade numbers, which have improved significantly over the last 4 years. Our trade numbers have moved from 60 million 4 years ago to 350 million last year, and to the early part of this year. We believe that there is tremendous potential and scope for these trade numbers to go up into the billions. And we have undertaken that we will facilitate these exercises by making sure that they are not only bilateral agreements, we improve the connection between Angola and Kenya, and also working under the framework of the tripartite treaty, TFTA, and also the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to facilitate greater integration, movement of people, movement of goods, trade between our countries as we do it within the context of our continent. We have also agreed, and I have undertaken to my brother President Lourenço, that our brothers and sisters in Angola, after the signing of the instrument today, all of them, with all passports, will now need no visa to come to Kenya. And I am very happy that His Excellency the President has agreed that Angola will equally consider the same when they go back home. And Mr. President, I think it's a very positive process that will enable our people to move with their ideas, with their businesses, so that we can create a greater interaction between our two countries. Your Excellency, I am truly grateful that you considered making this first ever trip by a state visit by a head of state from Angola to Kenya. I want to commit to you and to the people of Angola that in Kenya they have true friends and they have partners to work with for the progress of our two countries and for the progress of our continent. Mr. President, I also acknowledge that we suffer the consequences of climate change. And I want to thank you for sending your deputy for the Africa Climate Summit, which we held in Nairobi between the 4th and the 6th of last month, and that together we're going to formulate a common position as we go to COP28 in Dubai beginning next month to ensure that Africa makes its full contribution at this very crucial stage, especially in managing the effects of climate change that is ravaging our countries. Your Excellency, I am acutely aware that the trade numbers are in favor of Kenya. 96% of that trade is Kenyan goods finding its way to Angola. we will look at avenues that will balance this trade between our two countries, as I encourage business people, entrepreneurs in Kenya to continue working with their Angolan counterparts to enhance, increase, expand avenues of trade, investment, and business between our two countries, so that in a very short while we will be reporting billions of trade between our two countries. Your Excellency, let me finish by thanking you once again for making this first visit to Kenya, and I look forward to working with you on many of the continental assignments, as I promise you, Mr. President, that you have Kenya's support as you seek the chairmanship of Africa Union in the year 2025-2026, because I have confidence in your leadership capabilities, and I believe you will bring a wealth of knowledge, understanding, and experience to the leadership of our continent that me and you share in building its ability and capacity to take up its rightful place in the community of nations globally. Mr. President, thank you also for your consideration on Kenya's leadership in the multinational security support mission to Haiti that we will be undertaking on behalf of humanity to stabilize that country whose citizens are Africans like us. Again, Mr. President, thank you very much for your consideration, and welcome again to Kenya. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, President William Ruto. Thank you to the delegation present here and the press. I would like to say that we feel ourselves very grateful for the invitation extended to us by President William Ruto to extend this state visit, the first ever of an Angolan head of state to the Republic of Kenya. The ways of our two countries came across in the far year of 1975, when the then President of Kenya, President Jomo Kenyatta, one of the great leaders of Africa at that time, convened here on the Kenyan soil the leaders of the three liberation movements of our country, with the aim of trying to unite them so that we could not reach at Independence Day divided. That was a commendable diplomatic effort made by President Jomo Kenyatta, and that effort, unfortunately, and for reasons that have nothing to do with the will of Kenya, ended up being forfeited for other reasons. Anyway, we have to thank that commendable initiative, and from that day, 1975, of that event which I've already mentioned, our destinies became much closer. Nevertheless, the level of our cooperation relations has not grown as one would expect. For all those years, we've been waiting up until we had the opportunity of signing this big number of cooperation instruments of which we are going to do our utmost in order to implement them for the interest of the two peoples and nations. These instruments include virtually all the fields of cooperation that range from agriculture, tourism, environment, and more concretely, wildlife, a sector in which Kenya has a great mastery, and we need to learn from Kenya's experience, mainly because we also have some game parks and we are part of the so-called Okavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area, which will be the biggest area in our country. And we need to get the experience of those who have mastery in these matters. And amongst them, without a shadow of doubt, we have to single out Kenya. But other fields such as science, ICT, are also of our common interest, not only that of Kenya, but of Angola as well. We have to single out the need for the resumption of the air connection between Nairobi and Luanda, which used to happen in the recent past, but due to COVID-19, that was interrupted and not resumed up until to date. So we committed ourselves during our deliberations today to do our utmost in order to resume that connection, not only the existing one, maybe to expand and have the two air companies to fly from both capitals, from and to both capitals. Trade between African countries is something that needs to be priority for our economies. For us to develop our continent, we need to correct the current situation whereby our exports are exclusively devoted to other continent and forgetting our own African continent. We need to have more trade amongst ourselves. Trade exchanges amongst us have to be increased substantially in terms of volume, and regional integration that is already taking place here amongst the Eastern African countries should be expanded to other sub-regions, and there we can have the bridge between SADC member states and EAC member states that have these kind of trade far well developed. So Angola is now chairing SADC, and in this capacity we are going to make all our efforts in order to connect more in terms of trade exchanges between the two sub-regions. Mr. President, we have taken the commitment of bringing closer our nations, and for such, first we need to bring closer people in general, but notably businessmen. And one of great obstacles has been the visa issue, as Mr. President have rightly put it out. We thank you for Kenya unilaterally has taken a further step in waiving visa, not only on diplomatic passports, but also on honorary passports, so that Angolan citizens can freely enter the Kenyan territory. In these matters, in principle, reciprocity has to prevail, as there has to be reciprocity. I've said to President Ruto that in our return back home, we will carefully consider the possibility of extending a visa waiver on diplomatic passports as signed today and extend to other type of visas. So rest assured, Mr. President, that this is something that is not closed. So in my return to Rwanda with the Angolan government, we will consider and deal with this matter in as much as the signing can take place at any moment, either here or in the city of Luanda. We have been working already jointly in a coordinated manner in order to contribute to building peace on our continent. Angola and Kenya are working in a delicate process, which is the process of bringing peace in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. That is a complicated issue, but it's not impossible. So that's why we are optimistic that together we will be able to find peace, not only in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but in general in the whole Great Lakes region, in as much as this conflict is not merely an internal conflict, but it has affected, unfortunately, the good relations that used to exist between the Democratic Republic of Congo and the neighboring country of Rwanda. So we are working together in order to reverse the situation. So far as we have noted, the results of our endeavor have been positive, but we've reached to a point where we cannot stop. We have to take the next step, and this is what we are doing. We are engaged in continuing. We will not give in so that the missing step can be taken, so that eventually we can achieve the so much awaited peace in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on one side, and also to reestablish the good friendship and cooperation relations that used to exist between the two sister countries, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. I would like to seize this occasion, Mr. President, to thank you publicly for Kenya having availed itself to support Angola's candidacy at the chairmanship of African Union in 2025-2026, and we thank you for that. So please, Mr. President, you may also count on us that we are on the side of Kenya for the mission that you are going to undertake at the United Nations, being a sister country of African descendants, which is Haiti, based on Kenya's experience in peacekeeping missions in other countries. We are pretty sure that in this mission you will also emerge successfully, in as much as there is the willingness to help our brothers and sisters who unfortunately are going through a situation of domestic instability that needs to be corrected. Mr. President, allow me also to seize this occasion with cameras and microphones to invite you, Mr. President, to officially on a state visit to the Republic of Angola on the best convenient moment for you, that is to be negotiated between our two diplomacies. So we are willing and hopeful that such a date will be very soon so that we can close, but not really close. We can consolidate the start of visit exchange at the highest level between the heads of state of Angola and Kenya. So, Mr. President, everyone present, the two delegations, once again, I would like to say that we are very grateful for the very warm and brotherly and friendly manner we've been received here at the city of Nairobi in our first state visit. Thank you very much.
Applause, please, for the Excellencies. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you. Your Excellencies, with your permission, we'll now go to questions from media members of the press. And let's start with your name, the media house you represent. If the question is specific to a specific president, please mention, with a maximum of 2 questions per media house. Over to you for your questions.
Okay, good morning. This question is to, my name is Gerald Kiala from Angola newspaper. This question is to His Excellency's President William Ruto. Mr. President, follow the meeting with His Excellency's President João Lourenço. What can we expect on a tourism cooperation between the two countries? Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Seth Olale. I represent Citizen TV here in Kenya. Mine goes to the host president, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, in regards to the processes, that is, in regards to the peace agreement, the political and the diplomatic interventions, and especially in Eastern DRC, in regards to the Luanda process and the Nairobi process, both ensuring that there is stability in Eastern DRC. Is the Luanda process in agreement with what the Nairobi process is doing towards making the Eastern DRC a stable nation, or that particular region of DRC? Or are there emerging issues? We saw recently of a need for an intervention in regards to the ICRAF mandate. This is the Joint Forces of the East Africa Forces, an extension towards ensuring that there is ceasefire in Eastern DRC. Does Luanda also share the same sentiments as Nairobi process? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with those 2 questions, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. On the subject of tourism, as Mr. President said earlier, we have, as a country, a bit more experience in the space around tourism, management of our national parks, management of our natural assets, and the whole space about training of human capital to run our tourism assets and tourism products. And we have extended scholarships to citizens of Angola. In fact, We have already 5 scholarships running. Students from Angola reported to our Kenya Utalii College last September. They are undertaking their courses. We have agreed in this meeting to expand avenues and spaces of training for citizens from both sides in the areas that we have competitive advantage. We have also agreed that this expansion of opportunities will ensure that students and citizens from our 2 countries benefit from the training facilities that we have. You've just seen another MOU signed here on training of government officials under the Kenya School of Government and the equivalent in Angola. You've also seen an MOU here signed on diplomatic training for our diplomats. And so the scope of expansion is going to go into the Tibet space, into many other spaces. And as we cement and consolidate our relations, there will be additional opportunities for our citizens to benefit from training facilities on both sides of the divide. On the matter of DRC, President Lourenço has demonstrated great statesmanship in his stewardship of both the ICGLR process as mandated by AU and the mediation efforts between DRC and Rwanda. And that is in harmony and in synchrony with the Nairobi process. The Nairobi process is engaged in bringing together the armed groups and engaging them in dialogue so that they can participate in the process that will eventually, starting with cessation of hostilities, going into the next space of cantonment, then demobilization and disarmament, and then reintegration further down the road. That whole process has to be a process that involves EAC, the DRC administration, and all the armed groups, including the M23. And in that process, we are all aligned. In fact, when the cantonment finally happens, Angola will be providing troops that will guard the cantonment sites. So what we are doing as East African force and what Angola and SADC and the other partners are doing under the ICGLR process is in synchrony and is in harmony, and it is complementary to what we are all doing about stabilizing Eastern DRC as a sister country in our region that has yearned for many years for stability and dealing with a conflict situation so that they can engage in development and in progress and enjoy prosperity like the rest of the citizens of our region.
Thank you very much. With regard to cooperation in tourism sector, all of us are aware that Kenya is very strong in tourism. And contrary to Angola, that due to well-known reasons that have to do with the fact that our country had lived a long period of armed conflict, our tourism sector is not developed yet, but our country has great potential to becoming also an important tourist destination. Therefore, we are working in order to make that possible. But that will only be possible if we are humble enough to recognize that we are lacking in knowledge and experience, and we need to seek that knowledge and experience from those countries that are our friends, and we don't need to go very far in order to learn that experience within our continent. We have such knowledge to a handful of friends in Kenya, Namibia, Botswana, South Africa, and other African sister countries with whom we would like to work so that we can find that we are lacking so that we can kickstart our tourist industry. Angola possesses more or less the same wildlife that is found in Kenya. We have also a lot of water courses, and as a consequence of that, attraction for tourists might be bigger. I must say, in all parks and natural reserves that we have, but at least in some of them, the interest is huge. But it's not only about interest. There has to be at least the minimum conditions so that we can attract tourism to our country. So we count a lot on Kenya to help us develop our tourism. We know that Kenya does not have and does not need to fear competition, in as much as we are in very different stages. We are at the start and Kenya is always far away. So a student will need centuries to reach the level of its master. So Kenya, rest assured, because it will help us develop our tourism sector. With regard to the joint efforts that we've been making in order to help our DRC brothers and sisters find peace, and what would be the synchrony existing between the two processes, that is the Nairobi and the Luanda processes. The only difference is that the Nairobi process is broader. The Luanda process has to do only with M23. So that was the mandate that was given to us by the African Union. The African Union gave Angola the mandate to deal especially with the case of M23. We are all aware that in Eastern DRC there are many armed groups fighting against the central authorities. They are in hundreds, whereas the Nairobi process deals with all those groups. That's their mandate. The Luanda process deals only with M23 because that was the mandate given by the AU. Modestly, we have made some great progresses. When I say we made, it's not only about Luanda, but Luanda and Nairobi processes. Jointly, we've made great progress, but we have become stagnant on one item. We need to have the M23 cantonment carried out, and while that is not achieved, we are running the risk of losing all the gains that we've achieved so far, and we don't want that to happen, because everything that has been achieved has been achieved at the cost of great sacrifice by all, not only efforts by the mediator who are the progress, but also the efforts made by the Congolese authorities, the Rwandan authorities, and the M23 themselves. And we don't want this process to derail. We don't want the process to stay at stalemate. So we need to move to the next step, which is important. That has to do with M23 cantonment. We are not going to get into detail where the bottlenecks are that makes it that this step is not taken up until today. But I'd like to say that we are optimistic that sooner or later that will happen, and it has to happen for the good of peace in that country and the whole region. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. My name is Hilda Katebe from Sauti TV. And my question is, has language been a barrier in regard to the state visit? And language being such an instrument in trade and tourism, how can this be remedied going forward? And also, how can the youth benefit from that remedy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ernesto Bartolomeu from Angolan Public Television. My question goes to President William. President, the decisions always comes from the top. And the question is, apart of visas and the return of Kenyan Airways to Luanda, today people are begging for food. I don't know if with President Lourenço you have been discussing to set up a bread basket, so to speak, on coffee and tea in Angola. Thank you very much.
Take a final question.
Your Excellencies, thank you very much. My name is Apollo TV47 here in Kenya. Kindly requesting if you can unpack for us the MOU on oil and gas, and second on wildlife. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. On language, language has never been a barrier for people to engage in business or trade or investment. We all have different languages, and there are ways of overcoming barriers. As you can see, this meeting is proceeding very well in all languages, because we have intermediaries who do their job, and it's an avenue also for creating opportunities for people to work. I'm sure the gentleman who is translating there would be a lot less engaged if he wasn't doing what he's doing. But President Lourenço has said he just needs 2-3 weeks and he will learn a lot of English. I think I need a lot more time myself to learn Portuguese. But all that said, I think business integration will still proceed, even as we look for ways of harmonizing. As you very well know, for East Africans, we are working on how to consolidate Kiswahili to be spoken by about 12 or so countries. But we will continue to look at avenues of improving on language and seeing how communication can go ahead. But I don't think it can be an impediment on relations between countries or relations between business people, because money has no language. Business has no language. The language of business is the same in all dialects and in all languages. On the issue of the bread basket, it is true that there is an opportunity for us to engage, since our continent is home to close to 2/3 of the world's uncultivated arable land. Unfortunately for us in Kenya, we do not have that much land that is arable and that has the kind of endowments like you have in Angola. And there is an opportunity. And in fact, there is a request for Kenyan farmers to work with their Angolan counterparts, especially in the areas of growing food, because you have so much land in Angola that we can use to grow food both for the people of Angola and the people of Kenya and the people of our continent. For us in Kenya, only 14% of our land has enough water. Kenya is almost 80% arid and semi-arid, but we are also working on ensuring that we deploy irrigation to expand land under food production in our country as we work with other interventions to support farmers. But I agree with you, there is opportunity for collaboration. And I think the President's visit today opens a whole window for us to engage our farmers in that exercise. On the unpacking of the MOUs, as has been said, as has been requested by somebody there, I think that can be done elaborately. Once we live here, we will make the MOUs available so that you can find the nuances of what we have agreed on. Thank you very much.
Bom, com relação à questão da...
Well, with regard to the issue of language, as rightly said President William Ruto, this is not an impediment for the development of human relations, for the development of friendship, economic cooperation, relations, and mainly for the young ones. Less problem, because youngsters can learn very quickly, mainly when it comes to languages. So languages are not an impediment, absolutely for nothing. There is a language that is called human language. As long as there are two human beings, in principle, they are bound to understand each other, even without an interpreter. They cannot speak the language 100%, but there is always an understanding that is reached. With regard to other questions that President Ruto has already replied, I will not mention them, but I would like to cling to the issue of cooperation in the field of oil and gas. As you know, Angola is an oil producing and exporting country, and we would be very pleased to convey the experience that we have gathered over the years in this oil sector to our brothers and sisters in Kenya, whom we know that are taking the first steps in order to start the development of oil and gas industry in their country. So just to give that assurance, Angola is open and willing to share with Kenya everything we know, everything that we've learned, and everything and all mistakes that we've made that we have corrected along the time to avoid that our brothers and sisters from Kenya fall in the same mistakes. Muito obrigado.
Excellencies, that was the end of the joint press conference. We'll now allow the Excellencies to retreat and proceed for lunch. Delegates, ministers, cabinet secretaries, diplomats, you're also welcome to lunch, as will direct you by the protocol officers. So we'll allow the Excellencies to proceed for lunch, and delegates, you're welcome as well. Thank you.